Salt hung perpetually in the air above Citadel Maris, grit so fine it powdered rooftops and seeped into the vinyl joints of windows. From the harbor, you could taste it long before you glimpsed the city, because the first thing a traveler saw was not buildings at all, but the impossible ring of figures that hemmed the shore like a colossal necklace. 41 statues, each the height of a modest skyscraper, stood shoulder to shoulder upon the seawall, their backs to the ocean. Their great 3D printed shoulders arched as though bracing against tides that could sweep away lesser works of men. It had taken a generation to print them, the old story said. Autonomous cranes skated along curved rails, extruding bio-concrete in continuous threads, day and night, guided by algorithms whose authors were nameless now. The printers were long silent, their steel limbs locked in rust beside the breakwater. But the statues remained. Women and men, cloaked and bare, warriors and poets, each facade styled from a different period of human art, all united by the same hunched poise and staring gaze over the frontier of waves. They were called, with more reverence than creativity, the Sentinels. Every midsummer at dawn, a hush fell over the harbor district. Boats were lashed, shop doors slammed shut, and citizens climbed the terraced streets to rooftops or balconies or any perch that offered a clear sight line to the sea wall. At the first sliver of sun, a sound like grinding stone rolled across the bay, and the sentinels' heads, massive helms, sculpted braids, solemn brows, shifted a fraction of a degree inland, turning away from the ocean's infinity to look upon the city they guarded. Children were taught how many degrees remained. Merchants tracked the angles and ledgers alongside tariffs and rainfall. Priests carried sextants in pockets the way others carried knives. Mira Sen, junior archivist of the Bureau of Public Memory, had watched 26 such turnings. She had, since girlhood, measured them more precisely than anyone else, because the Bureau's southern annex occupied a tower, whose upper floors were level with the Sentinel's neckline. The archivists kept instruments there. Laser rangefinders, photogrammetric arrays, originally intended to monitor erosion in the breakwater, but Mira had repurposed them for the statues. Noting their minuscule shifts was her private ritual, half science, half superstition. And this year, the numbers were frightening. 2 weeks before midsummer, she convened with Chief Archivist Vandrel in the dust-choked map room. Vandrel was broad, patient, and, as he liked to remind staff, too old for panic. "You see error where I see calibration drift," he said, after scrolling through Mira's spreadsheets. "The Sentinels have rotated 0.3 degrees faster this cycle. I doubt the accuracy. I've checked the instrument drift twice. They're turning faster. At this rate, they'll face us completely in just 3 years. 3 years? Vandrel leaned back in his squeaking chair, peering at the ceiling fresco of the first printers. Well, the charter says judgment when they align, but a charter is metaphor. The founder wanted ceremony, civic glue. There's no hidden catastrophe waiting to drop. Mira hesitated before sliding the second file forward, parchment stiff from climate control. Maybe there is, she said. I decoded a bank of design schematics we found last autumn, sealed in saline foam. Looks like activation sequences. Vandrel's eyes narrowed. The Bureau's purpose was to prevent precisely this type of alchemy, reviving tech from the city's fervid founding century. Schematics, he repeated, soft but edged. Continue. They show articulations deeper than the necks, pistons in the torsos, channels for some liquid compound, and carved beneath the diagrams the phrase, cleansing when witnessed. I don't think the Sentinels are just statues. The chief rose and pulled shutters across the window before speaking. Even if you're correct, the Council won't authorize a dig into the Sentinel's guts. The optics. The optics change if the city evaporates in 3 years. Mira, Vandrel exhaled. You are an archivist. Record. Do not prophesy. So she left the map room with her evidence unresolved, adrenaline cooling into something heavier. A weight that pressed her ribs when she tried to sleep, that surfaced in dreams of stone jawlines splitting to reveal furnaces. Her only confidant was Thomas Rilke, a retired structural engineer whose cluttered flat overlooked the dry docks. He'd helped maintain the printers before their decommissioning, and by association, the statues themselves. Tomas greeted Mira with tea and a wheezy laugh that smelled of anise whenever she arrived after bureau hours. He squinted at the plan she carried. They used composite rebar laced with capillaries. I never knew why. Figured it was just over-engineered. But capillaries for what? Could be coolant. Could be fuel. Fuel for what, Thomas? The old man rubbed his jaw. When you grow up in a place like this, guardian myths seep in. You don't question whether they actually guard. But I remember calibrating the print drones. Each sentinel has a hollow sternum with a crucible cage. We were told it would house seismic stabilizers. Funny, since the breakwater bedrock is stable. Mira felt her scalp prickle. If they're weapons, how do we disarm them? Tomas nodded toward the harbor through his window. There's a maintenance crawl space inside every statue, hatch at the sea-facing heel. Haven't been opened in decades. You'll need clearance. Or subtlety. That night, under a moon mottled by watery clouds, they rowed a skiff beyond the fishing nets. The sentinels towered above, silvered by ancient floodlights. From below, the printed layers resembled growth rings on a petrified forest. Mira guided the lamp's beam until it caught the access hatch 6 meters above the tide. Thomas stabilized an assault hook against the stone. Up close, the bioconcrete was cool and slightly damp, exhaling the day's collected spray. Inside, the crawl space smelled of rust and algae. Their headlamps cut a conical path through dust that drifted like spores. It took minutes to realize the dust was not stone, but something lighter, ashy, and that the walls themselves vibrated subtly, as if breathing. Thomas muttered, "Active hydraulics." He traced a cable thread-like as kelp. Power draws minimal but present. Deeper they crawled until the corridor opened into a vertical shaft lit by pale emergency glyphs projected on stone. The glyphs pulsed rhythmically, counting seconds backward in a slow metronome. At the shaft's bottom, they found the cage Thomas remembered, and within lay a sphere the size of a cargo pod, its surface webbed with glassy lines. A faint violet glow throbbed in its core. Mira's voice shivered. Not seismic stabilizers. Advanced reactor, Thomas guessed, fascination warring with dread. Looks dormant, or dreaming. She raised her camera. The flash cracked the darkness, and the glow inside the sphere brightened in reply, as though some optical sensor had registered her theft of an image. "Let's go," Thomas whispered. Back on the water they rowed in silence, each hearing imaginary echoes of gears awakening. At dawn, Mira submitted her report. Photos, schematics, measurements, to Vandrel and the City Council's emergency quorum. The meeting convened in a stateroom paneled with ship timbers, the mayor's chair flanked by silk banners. Councilor Nix, whose portfolio included civic traditions, adjusted her platinum lapel pin. Archivist, everyone knows the Sentinels are hollow. The founder left dramatic warnings. They give people comfort. Why upset them with talk of reactors? Mira's throat tightened. Because reactors don't belong in decorative art. Someone engineered a countdown. Evidence suggests nothing unsafe thus far, Nix countered. The statues have stood 60 years, and let's be frank, we rely on the pilgrimage festival. Shippers extend contracts, tourists arrive, money flows. Panic will throttle that. A trick of the sunlight caught Nix's pin. It wasn't decorative after all, but a miniature sextant, its adjustable vane locked at a particular angle. The very angle, Mira realized, of the sentinel's current gaze. The counselor had monetized prophecy. Vandrel cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise. We expand monitoring, form a task force. Mira slammed a palm on the table. Monitoring won't stop a chain reaction. We need to shut them down. Security escorted her from the hall. Days passed. City preparations for midsummer reached fever pitch. Banners strung across tiered streets, amphitheaters raised, jugglers practicing routines in the plaza. Fireworks barges anchored just inside the ring, ironically framed by the statues themselves. Beneath celebration pulsed hushes of doubt. Rumors leaked. Archivists muttered about reactors. Divers claimed they had heard humming from the seawall at night. Some citizens dismissed it. Others stocked food and fuel. More than a few chartered ferries beyond the horizon for the holiday, as if distance could excuse superstition. Vandrel visited Mira in her modest apartment, carrying a letter embossed with the council seal. "Suspension," he said. "No bureau access until after the festival. I argued for leniency." Mira clenched the decree, then looked at her mentor. "Did you at least read my full data?" "I read everything. Data alone rarely moves the world. Stories do. And right now, the council prefers the old story." "Then we write a louder one." He smiled sadly, fingers clasping hers. "Be careful." She disobeyed suspension within hours, meeting Tomas inside an abandoned printer depot on Dockside 2. 8 original print drones rested there, spindly and dust-shrouded. But Mira had studied their firmware and archives for years. She intended to wake one. "We can't out-muscle the Sentinels," she told Thomas, "but if we print a countermeasure that interrupts their articulation, wedge the neck gears or bleed the reactor coolant, we might buy time." Thomas rubbed a drone's desiccated arm. Ambitious and illegal. Judgment doesn't care about ordinances. They replaced cracked hydraulic lines, patched data conduits. The drone flickered to life with a chime that echoed like cathedral bells. Mira fed it a model. A lattice of graphene ceramic designed to fuse inside joint seams when injected as slurry. Over 2 nights, the drone printed barrels of the lattice compound and several spider-like crawlers to deliver it. When the festival's eve arrived, Mira and Thomas slipped through the carnival crowd, towing crates disguised as fireworks. Music masked the rattle of crawler legs under tarps. Midnight found them again at the seawall. The tide lower now, barnacles glowing faintly. From the vantage of the breakwater's edge, they saw the city luminous behind them. Fountains of colored plasma whirling above rooftops, while before them, the ocean stretched blank and black. They unleashed the crawlers. Mechanical limbs skittered up ankle columns and into the statue's innards, guided wirelessly by Mira's console. On the console, schematics bloomed with status alerts as each crawler reached a neck gear. 12 completed, 18, 25. Her breath steadied. 37, Thomas narrated. 38, we might make it. At crawler 40, a red alert screamed. Feed pressure spiked. Internal cameras showed the lattice compound erupting into steam, melting circuit boards. 2 more crawlers seized, sensors fizzled, and then the console lost all telemetry. High above, a tremor rippled through the sentinels. Mira and Thomas pressed against the sea wall as a vibration rolled like thunder and bone. Across water, the festival orchestra faltered mid-anthem. The crowd's cheer sharpened. The sentinels' heads began to turn, not in their usual measured arc at dawn, but now, violently, grinding degrees and minutes, stone scraping stone. Dust avalanched from brows. The statues were finishing their gaze early. "We accelerated them," Tomas gasped. "Our compound triggered a bypass." Searchlights from the promenade whirled to focus on the ring. People screamed as a halo of stone dust shimmered. By instinct, Mira grabbed Thomas's sleeve. "The maintenance tunnels connect statue to statue. We can reach the harbor bunkers beneath the old citadel. Go!" They scrambled back into the hatch, darkness pulsing with alarm strobes. Inside, the shaft's violet reactor glared white now, heat blossoming across the plates. Mira could not look directly without spots clouding her vision. They ascended iron rungs into horizontal passageways where conduits howled with fluid. Human voices echoed ahead. Divers who had come to test rumors and joined them in flight. Meters became millennia. They emerged beneath the citadel's sub-basements, built on pre-sentinel fortifications, where blast doors waited, half-sealed by bureaucracy and rust. Tomas smashed the emergency lever. Hydraulics screamed. Doors grudgingly yawned. Mira turned in the threshold. Through the tunnel mouth, she could just glimpse the harbor through service grills. Statues now faced directly inward, shoulders hunched like judges leaning into verdict. Chasms opened across their torsos, jawlines unfurled into vents. Thunderheads of scintillating plasma vomited outward. The sky lit violet, turning surf white, then red. The blast doors slammed. It could have been hours or minutes that followed. Time melted into a flicker of emergency lanterns, coughs, whispered prayers. The floor rocked as if the earth itself had become a ship in a storm. Heat seeped through rock, faded, then was replaced by awful silence. When the doors were finally pried open, a copper twilight greeted them. The statues still stood, but were hollowed silhouettes, their exteriors vitrified, inner cores burned away. Beyond them, the sea boiled around pillars of steam. Parts of the city nearest the sea wall, warehouses, carnival stages, fresh-painted cafes, lay flattened, yet the upper tiers were miraculously spared. Tomas wept at the ruin of docks he had walked since boyhood. Mira felt no tears, only a weightless clarity. The inevitable had arrived, and somehow she was still breathing. Survivors clustered on higher streets as ash drifted. Counselor Nix staggered from debris. Sextant Pin fused to her coat. She met Mira's eye, but said nothing. In the weeks that followed, rescue teams sailed from neighboring provinces. They found the port unusable, its foundations glassed, but inland infrastructure survived. Scientists in hazmat skin suits examined sentinel cores and confirmed a hybrid reactor fuel of saline and isotope foam, designed to vent superheated plasma inward upon complete alignment. Why the founder installed such a sword above his own descendants remained unanswered. Rumor hardened into communal memory, that the sentinels spared what they meant to judge, that they had culled complacency, that the city was reborn. Mira did not argue. She organized oral testimonies, mapped damage, logged names of the dead and living. Stories, she realized, could raise or rebuild a city more efficiently than any beam of violet fire. Tomas once asked, sitting beside her on a balcony months later, "Do you regret trying to stop it?" "I regret failing," she replied, "but not trying." Beneath them, the harbor was quieter than anyone remembered, a scabbed plain where kelp clung to half-melted pilings. In the distance, salvage cranes worked to dismantle the sentinels piece by piece, though some citizens begged to preserve the statues as lessons. Their faces, fused mid-turn, stared forever at the scarred city. No ocean remained in their gaze, only reflection of what they had done. Mira closed her notebook. We'll build again, but without walls that promise protection while plotting judgment. And if someone prints new guardians, then let our children watch them. She smiled, a fierce and fragile expression, and let them ask better questions than we did. A breeze off the water, cool, unsalted, nearly sweet, rustled pages of her notes. It felt like a beginning.